Yeah, just a different angle on the free speech debate. Something I wrote about earlier this year. Silence is not violence, which I think is it's an important issue because it's an important reminder that the threats to freedom don't only come from old-fashioned right-wing authoritarians these days, but often come in the guise of progressive pro-freedom and anti-racist arguments. The slogan "silence is violence," or more specifically, "white silence is violence," was very prominent in the Black Lives Matters protest earlier this year, which had a tremendous resonance with people, particularly with young people across the West, including in the UK. And silence is violence is a very powerful and emotive argument, calling on people to come out and declare themselves on the side of the Black Lives Matter movement and to demonstrate that they were anti-racist. However, the idea that silence is violence is also a threat to freedom of speech, which, as we know, is the principle, the main liberty, which has been central to the struggle for equality, against racism, and for democracy and freedom in our society. Now, I've written for years about the growth of a culture of "you can't say that," kind of creeping conformism, which is enforced either through formal forms of state censorship or more often through informal censorship, which we now call cancel culture, and which spreads right across our cultural and academic worlds, as we know. You can't say that is a problem we've been up against. Now, we're faced now with something which goes further than that, which is saying to us, not only you can't say that, but you must say this. That's what "silence is violence" slogan was about. It wasn't just about saying to people you must speak out, but you must speak out and follow the script. You must verbally take the knee and repeat the mantra that we're giving you, and there's no room for argument or discussion about that. That's very dangerous. We started, how do we get here? We started with the dangerous idea that words are violence, which has been used against free speech in recent years. And now we've moved on to the point where silence is apparently violence. And that is being told what you must say and indeed what you must think. What has that got to do with a culture of freedom? This is what we used to call compelled speech. Historically, it's associated with right-wing tyranny, with authoritarian governments, of both the right and the left, in fact. Apologies for being the 18th person today to mention George Orwell's 1984, but if you think of the compulsory 2-minute hate that Big Brother organises in 1984, that's a kind of example of compelled speech, of being told to say, repeat the government line as outspokenly as possible. So historically, it was associated with authoritarian and tyranny governments, and it was recognised as a threat to freedom of speech. Free speech campaigners, particularly in America, campaigned against compelled speech, got the Supreme Court to recognise that the compelled speech goes against the First Amendment. That was normally arguing against compelled speech imposed by governments that wanted you to repeat government propaganda and the national anthem and so on at the point of a gun, and against corporations which wanted people to repeat, their employees to repeat their kind of mantra without question. Now we have compelled speech, which is attempting to be enforced by progressives and anti-racists, which it sounds a great thing, but it's just as dangerous if we believe in the principle of freedom of speech. I think we've got to insist that it's quite possible to be uncompromisingly against racism and absolutely in favour of unfettered freedom of speech, because freedom of speech has been central to the struggle against racism. As Frederick Douglass, the ex-slave and campaigner against slavery, said in 1860 in America, slavery cannot tolerate free speech. 5 years of it would break every chain in the South. It's always been central to the struggle for liberation and equality, and we can't afford to compromise on that principle. And freedom of speech must mean the right to be offensive, to speak the truth as you understand it, with no ifs and no buts, as Kerry says. But it must also involve the right to listen, to think for yourself, and to say nothing at all, rather than simply repeating what you're told to say, no matter whether the orders you're given are coming under the banners of defending the crown and the state, or defending the rights of minorities. No, silence is not violence, and free speech is not to be compromised on anybody's say-so.